Chris Buescher in an RFK Ford is able to outduel Martin Truex Jr. in the closing laps at Michigan to get his second win in a row with just 3 races remaining in the regular season. Let's talk about NASCAR in the Irish Hills. Hello everybody, welcome to Dirty Air. I'm your host Alex Lambert, and let's talk about NASCAR at Michigan, a 2-day affair. We started on Sunday yesterday, run 75 laps, and then the rain, the weather came for the rest of the day and evening, and we would finish the race today on a Monday afternoon, and it was definitely an exciting one. It was no snooze fest at all, with Chris Buescher able to hold off Martin Truex Jr. at the end of it, and it was a fantastic duel, and let's go ahead and get right on into it. So let's talk about the finish itself. We had some strategy calls being put into play. Martin Truex Jr. decided to come down pit road a little bit earlier in the race, so that way his last pit stop would be just shorter. He would give up track position and have to put less fuel in the car, so his pit stop would be shorter, while Chris Buescher just decided to stay out, take the track position, and have just a little bit longer pit stop. Obviously, that turned out to be the right call in the end. Martin Truex Jr. was the class of the field all day long, it's no doubt. You can take a look at what he was doing here, flying through the field. This is at the end of stage 2, when he passed like 15 cars at the end of the race, came all the way up and won the stage in the final lap, outdoing Daniel Suarez. That was a stage 2 battle, and he was flying through the field all day. Throughout the entire race, it seemed like he was the only driver that was able to maneuver the way he wanted to and pass cars the way that he wanted to. But that changed at the very end with Chris Buescher holding him off at the end of this race. Him and Tyler Reddick, Chris Buescher and Tyler Reddick in the closing laps were kind of drafting together, doing some sort of little tandem drafting to try to get away from Martin Truex Jr. in the 19. And that worked for a while until, unfortunately, Tyler Reddick had an issue. One of the tires went down. Then on pit road, they couldn't get the tire off quick enough, and it turned into a disaster for the 45 car of Tyler Reddick. But that gave enough for Chris Buescher to hold out the lead. And Martin Truex Jr., when he had a chance to get to him, you can take a look at it here. When he tried to make a pass for him in the low lane, we saw where this didn't work all race long. He got loose, slid up the track, and had to let out of the gas so he wouldn't wreck the car. That was kind of the closing point there. He got up to him later on, closer to the finish, closer to the white flag, but did not have enough time to at least try to make a move. He raced him cleanly, but it was hard to pass. It was hard to get by him at this racetrack with this package, and Martin Truex Jr. had to settle for a second-place finish after he was definitely the dominating car in this race, definitely the fastest car out there. It was awesome to see how he was able to maneuver through the field. But that shows that Chris Buescher was able to use his talent to hold him off. 2 weeks in a row. Had an overtime finish last week and had a win this week, Chris Buescher. That's impressive to hold off Martin Truex Jr. this week, to hold off charging Denny Hamlin, other drivers last week in Richmond. And I think that says a lot about Chris Buescher and RFK. You know, we talked about since this team started. We talked about last year how Brad Keselowski's going to fix Roush, going to bring this team back. And as we went into this year, we talked about how they could be really good again this season because of Brad Keselowski. But I think Chris Buescher is playing a major role in this growth as well. Brad Keselowski has brought the experience, but Chris Buescher, 2015 Xfinity champion, 2016 NASCAR rookie, so he has tons of experience. This is his 7th year in the NASCAR Cup Series. He now has experience at this level. Do not underestimate Chris Buescher's talent, and I'm glad that he's finally able to show it now with fast race cars. Him, Brad Keselowski, power duo right now, and Chris Buescher deserves just as much credit as Brad K, because I think he's putting in a lot of effort, and you're starting to see the results. Brad Keselowski hasn't got that win yet, but he's going to get one coming up soon. A lot of speed they're showing, and they were talking about it on the NBC broadcast, potentially the best Ford team, and like Brad K and Chris Buescher said, if you look at the results, they are the best Ford team right now in the NASCAR Cup Series. So hats off to Chris Buescher, Brad Keselowski. They have really built this RFK team up to be something special and something that we're going to have to watch for probably years to come. So we're going to have to keep an eye out for both of those drivers moving into the playoffs this season. So we have a few other storylines to talk about today. Obviously, we had a few big wrecks. These were yesterday. I want to show the wrecks from Sunday. A few big storylines. Big names were involved in some crashes. Kyle Busch tried to make a move on the bottom of Ryan Blaney. Just could not make it stick, which is so unusual with these cars. Even at this racetrack, that's something we haven't really seen before with these cars at this track. So it was strange that Kyle Busch got loose like that, but ended up backing it into the wall. That was really unfortunate for him. His day ended on lap 15. Early exit to the race for him. We had at the end of stage 1, William Byron ended up getting loose, slammed the wall. He was out of the race. Chase Elliott unfortunately blew a tire and slid around, kind of similar to Kyle Busch's wreck, except this was obviously due to a tire being blown and backed into the wall. Not sure what happened there with Chase Elliott. I'm wondering if he maybe run over something or something obviously was wrong with the tires there, because he was the only flat tire we saw, at least that I saw during the entire race. I think maybe Ryan Preece had a flat tire later on, but that was the only time that we saw a flat tire with a front runner like that, Chase Elliott, and there was not a lot of tire fall off at this race all day long. So I'm surprised that Chase Elliott blew a tire, ended his day early, putting him in a must-win situation as far as the playoffs go. Christopher Bell was running up front, going for the lead, and this was earlier in the race. This was in stage 2 back on Sunday, and unfortunately tried to pull the same move that Kyle Busch did and just got loose, got sucked around, backed it into the wall. Now, Christopher Bell was actually able to salvage that and finish in the top 15 after all that damage, was able to come all the way back on Monday. So props to him for staying at the racetrack and getting a solid finish. Every point matters, and each point you finish in the regular season definitely counts toward those playoff points, which are very important, as we see every year in the playoffs. So props to Christopher Bell to go out there and get those racing points. So let's take a look at the top 10. Let's take a look at the guys that did not have bad days. Obviously, you talk about Chris Buescher, who was able to hold off Martin Truex Jr. Denny Hamlin, who actually stalled on a pit stop late in the race, in the final stage of the race, was able to charge all the way back, use some strategy, and just had a lot of speed, was able to come all the way back and finish in the top 3. Brad Keselowski, another one of those drivers. I keep talking about it. Can he get the win? He was fast last week in Richmond, had a chance to win last week in Richmond, made an uncharacteristic mistake coming onto pit road, slid in the pit box. Brad Keselowski really cost himself a good opportunity to race for the win there, but his teammate won that race, but has had a lot of speed the last couple of weeks. They've been fast all year, but Brad Keselowski is really fast at this point of the season, heading into the NASCAR playoffs, which is the time you want to be fast. Kyle Larson was able to salvage a solid 5th place finish. Daniel Suarez racing to get into the playoffs, now just 5 points below the cut, finishes 6th today. His teammate Ross Chastain ran with him most of the day, was able to finish in the top 10. Chastain was in the top 10 for a majority of the day. You'd see him fall out sometimes, come back in. With the way strategy played out, it worked out well for Chastain, finishing in 7th. Kevin Harvick looked really rough yesterday in the heat. Once again, yesterday was way warmer than it was today. It was only 66 degrees today, almost 20 degrees warmer yesterday in Michigan. So that definitely changed the way these cars handled. But Kevin Harvick was really struggling on Sunday, came out today, run a lot better, used some strategy. But once again, Kevin Harvick, I believe this is his 4th top 10 in a row, is in the top 10. And that's how you're going to get it done. If you're not even a top 10 car, maybe not a top 15 car, but salvage the days, finish 8th, that's how you can get it done. And Kevin Harvick, that's why they call him the closer, and he's able to do it again. A solid 8th place finish for Kevin Harvick at Michigan at one of his best racetracks, last year's winner, but was able to get a solid 8th place finish. He has now 13 races left to try to get that final win for Kevin Harvick. We'll see if he can get it done. Ryan Blaney with a solid 9th place result. That's about where he run most of the race. Was probably a 9th place, 10th place car all day long. Eric Jones had a really solid day. Was in the top 5 at times. Run very well. And once again, Eric Jones on the 43 car has finished in the top 10. We talked about how tough it was from him switching over from Chevrolet to Toyota. He loses a lot of that, inside information from Chevrolet. That advantage from Chevrolet is definitely gone at this point of the season now, knowing they're moving to a new manufacturer in just a year. But if he's able to get a solid top 10 somewhat weekly now, at least more commonly, finish inside the top 10, that's impressive for Eric Jones. It'll be exciting to see what he can do moving forward for the rest of the season. Probably not going to make the playoffs. He's in a must-win, but it should be interesting to see what he can do nonetheless. So let's go through the playoff grid itself. We talked about William Byron, Kyle Busch early on in the race had big trouble, so they were unable to gain on that championship battle, get any more playoff points, change that momentum of a championship like I talked about in yesterday's video. But Martin Truex Jr. continuing to show massive amount of speed with 3 wins this season. Truex is the only driver in the field I can think of that really should have more than 3 wins. I go back to Richmond. I go back to Darlington in the spring. I go back to today. Many of races that Martin Truex Jr. coulda, shoulda, woulda won, just hasn't capitalized on those wins. But he has the speed, and he's finishing in the top. He got 2 stage wins today. Definitely racking up those playoff points trying to do for Truex. He's going to be a major threat when these playoffs start in just a couple of weeks, while guys like William Byron, Kyle Busch have started to fall off just a little bit, and Denny Hamlin also has really picked it up over the last few weeks as well. Want to keep an eye out for those guys as far as championship favorites moving into the playoffs. 3 races to go. Kevin Harvick, Brad Keselowski, you see them in green, 168 for Brad, 180 in for Kevin Harvick. I think you can consider both of them safe. If we do not have another new winner next week, I believe that'll put Kevin Harvick mathematically in the NASCAR playoffs. Obviously, 2 weeks will probably put Brad Keselowski mathematically in the playoffs if you don't get 2 new winners in the next couple of weeks. So definitely have to keep an eye out for that. Once again, you don't get 3 new winners this season that are not those 2, or that are below those 2, Brad Keselowski, Kevin Harvick, those 2 will be in. They have such a cushion over Bubba Wallace. They have such a cushion over the cut line. Those guys have had a really solid season. They are in the playoffs. Bubba Wallace was able to gain on his points today. Yeah, he wasn't in the top 10, but I believe he finished 16th. Had a decent day, got 16 stage points on the day, finishing up front in those stages will pay dividends, as we see every single season. And Bubba Wallace made some good strategy calls there to finish in the top 10 in both of those stages, get some solid stage points. 16 stage points is no joke. Ty Gibbs, same situation, finished 11th today for Ty Gibbs. Finally got a decent result. Has been running very well, but gets caught up in trouble. Was able to finish somewhat decent today in 11th. 3 points above the cut line for the rookie Ty Gibbs. I've already said this multiple times. If Ty Gibbs is able to make the NASCAR playoffs in his rookie season, I consider that a very, very successful rookie season. Very few times will a rookie make the NASCAR playoffs. Michael McDowell, unfortunately, had damage early on today, was unable to get many stage point, was unable to get a solid finish. Michael McDowell falls 3 points below the cut line, but Michael is going to some of his favorite racetracks. He's got 2 road courses coming up. He's got Daytona, your Daytona 500 champion in 2021. Those are some races that he's looking to get stage points and get decent finishes so he can try to gain that advantage over Ty Gibbs and potentially Bubba Wallace if Wallace has a couple of bad weeks. Remember, Wallace is not good at the road courses, so we'll have to keep an eye out for that. Daniel Suarez, another one of those drivers that has had success on road courses in the past. 2 of those coming up. He's 5 points below. It's so tight right now from 16th to 18th. You have A.J. Allmendinger back there, 24 points below. Just unfortunately could not catch a break with the pit crew all day long. That's unfortunate for him. Probably could have got some more points on the day if it wasn't for some rough pit stops, but he is 24 points below. And then Alex Bowman, I'll show you what happened here, was running decent today and once again gets caught up in trouble. The field on the high groove starts to stack up. Alex Bowman goes to the low side. I believe he runs into looked to be Michael McDowell, shoots back up the racetrack into Todd Gilliland. Just a really unfortunate circumstance there for Alex Bowman. Just turned way too far down the racetrack from what I can see and ended up taking himself out early in the race again. And that's one of those things I've talked about. Alex Bowman, he has got the speed, he just cannot get the results, and it's really frustrating, I'm sure, for him. He's now 44 points below the cut line. It might not mathematically be a must-win situation, but if you're Alex Bowman in the 48 team, I think you have to look at this as a must-win. You have to now be going for race wins in these last 3 races as kind of like a Hail Mary situation to try to find a way they can get into the top 16 in points. And I want to point out one more thing while we're looking at this playoff grid, is that every driver that is in yellow, every driver that has won a race this season, including Daytona 500 champ Ricky Stenhouse, Christopher Bell, Joey Logano, all these guys at the bottom of the win list with 1 win would be in the playoffs regardless if you counted wins or not. If they didn't count wins and just went on points, they would all be, every driver on this list would be in the top 16 in points. And I think that shows that this season we have the best drivers currently in the playoffs right now. Wouldn't be surprised if we got a surprise winner at Daytona at a road course to kind of shuffle that up a little bit. But as it stands right now, I think the drivers that have been the most consistent this season are in the playoffs, and I definitely like that as a fan personally. So that's exciting as well. But next week we do go to the Indy road course. Shane Van Gisbergen. Should be exciting to see what he's able to do. And of course, I'll do a race review video following Sunday's race. And of course, that's it. All there is to talk about. Like and subscribe if you like the video. And of course, once again, about Kyle Busch getting wrecked out early. Let's get rowdy.